Hey there, everybody. I'm Raven Sinclair here with Andrew Harvey. How are you, Andrew?
I'm great. I'm really great. Longing for Christmas, longing for the peace of Christmas.
Yes.
Strange though it will be this year. Yes.
Strange. Yes, that's an understatement. But yes, there's always a little extra light, isn't there, that comes into the world?
Oh, yes. And it is the birth of the divine human. It's the birth of a new possibility. Christmas is infinitely sacred to me. I love the whole imagery, the whole depth of what's happening at Christmas.
Yes. Well, and this Christmas is going to be unprecedented because we're in unprecedented times.
Absolutely.
And we're here to discuss a couple of things, really. You have a new book that is all the rage right now that you wrote with Carolyn Baker, who is a fabulous voice in these times, as are
Yes.
you. Um, and it's called Radical Regeneration. What is the subtitle, Andrew? I don't have my notes here.
It's actually birthing the new
Yes.
human in the age of extinction, birthing the new
Yes.
human. And this is, oh, I'm so deeply thrilled by this book because Carolyn and I poured our hearts and souls into it as elders because we know that we're in an immense evolutionary convulsion, that it is a major threshold for the human race, and that we will either cross it into a wholly new way of being and doing everything, or we will die out because we're facing a whole exploding set of crises, which each one of them are intractable, but all of them together represents a sign that the divine has decided that one kind of human race is over and another has to be born through immense ordeal. So we knew that, and we wanted to write a book that was absolutely of this time, because this is an unprecedented time. This is an unprecedented crisis. This is a global dark night crisis. And we wanted to show that there isn't a way out, but there is a way through. That if you align yourself with the fundamental laws of the dark night, and if you realize the meaning of the Dark Night, that it is a birth canal for a new humanity, and that the horrific suffering and the horrific destruction of old structures is a prelude to massive unleashing of massive creativity and massive new birth, the potential birth of a new species and of a new way of doing everything, so that we can live in harmony with nature, in harmony with the creation, in harmony with animals. If you realize that, then you are very blessed, because whatever happens and whatever unfolds in your life, you can enter the evolutionary stream of what's being born, what is being resurrected from this darkness that is exploding. And that's the thrilling part of this book. I feel it's thrilling in two ways, because it's thrilling to me finally to be able to speak like with Carolyn, directly, nakedly, not holding anything back, not being user-friendly, not being polite, but just saying, this is the situation, we have to face it. I'm thrilled that we were noble and strong enough and fierce enough and unillusioned enough to do that. But the thing that really thrills me is that I've been able, with Carolyn, to present this vision of regeneration, of rebirth out of death, of a deep evolutionary mysticism that is being kept secret in the great mystical traditions, but which is now essential to reveal to everyone, because the time of the realization of the great dream of God for an embodied divine humanity has come. And the first way in which it has come is as horror. But if we align with the deep meaning of the horror, that it is a birth convulsion, then amazing things will start to happen to us individually and together, and we will find access to wholly new powers of action and creation, which will astonish us and guide us through. This is very, very edgy stuff, and I'm thrilled to be able to give it in a very essential form to people at this moment.
Well, yes, and you mentioned, you mentioned these esoteric teachings, and I wonder if you agree with this, that they're plain to see. We just have to put on different we have to correct our perceptions, I guess, put on new glasses of consciousness to see what is there, what is imminent, what our next step is. And we are so stuck in our old stories and our old beliefs
Yes.
and these old patterns that we just can't see it. We can't always see it. So what do you suggest as a next step?
Well, first of all, I really do suggest that people who are serious about this time read this book, because in this book, we have set out all of the steps that we believe are absolutely essential to take. We're calling, as all of the illumined elders on the earth are calling now, for a major revolution of love in action. We're calling for a major global sacred activist revolution that will, in time, destructure this mad system of greed and allow us within the next decade to so change that we can deal with climate change, or begin to, because it is now catastrophic and it is now threatening the whole survival of the human race. We call for that, and we call for doing that with your whole being, aligned with the evolutionary truth that this crisis is birthing a new humanity. So aligned with the boiling golden stream of evolutionary mysticism, which means really getting down with what the evolutionary mystics have told us, which is that our destiny, our evolutionary destiny, is to be embodied divine beings on earth, the divine consciousness installed in mind and heart, soul, and body. So we need to get with that program, which is why we wrote the book, so that people could have the entire 4-part path, the way to attain unity with the one through intimacy, through cultivating radical intimacy with God, with one's self, with one's body, with one's life, with one's animals, with one's friends, really coming into loving union with reality. We give major practices as to how to do this, and we offer a training for this time, which is a training fundamentally in nobility, because in order to rise to the challenge of this time, what is needed is that we cultivate the nobility of the soul at the deepest depth we can, because what we're being asked to do, all of us, is to go on this vast evolutionary adventure, to rise to the challenge of putting love into action, not knowing whether it will work, because this adventure is still up for grabs. It depends on us. It depends on our courage, on our clarity, on our passion, on our deep belief, on our willingness to work with God. But if we don't do that, we'll die out. But even then, those who are summoned by love are summoned to be noble, to stand up, to go through the depths of the mystical path, so they can be strong enough and calm enough and joyful and passionate enough to really stand for God, whatever happens. And those are the special forces of evolution. Those are the ones who will go through the firewall, whatever happens. And who knows what their passionate search will create. Who knows what miracles will flow from them? Who knows what their mutation into the beginnings of a new species will actually engender in the human experiment. That's where we are. We're at a moment of infinite danger, infinite possibility, in which anything could happen, the very, very worst, but also the very most amazing. And what our book is about how you can begin to cultivate 3 very important things. First, you've got to get real about a serious mystical practice in a time like this. If you don't realize the world is threatened with extinction, the human race, the natural world, you're in a dream and you're missing the greatest gift that terror can give you, which is focus on getting in touch with reality, so that you know, you don't just reading in New Age books or the odd moment which you spend with the Upanishads, that you are that. You are the whole eternal light that's manifesting everything, the essential light consciousness. Don't just read that. Find it out. Find it out so that you know it, so that it grounds you in calm and purpose and force. So you got to get serious at last about simple, naked, mystical practice. And the greatest of them all is the saying of the name of God. This is the one that all the major mystical traditions recommend, and it's the practice that's recommended for this particular time, Kali Yuga, the time of great destruction and potential rebirth, by the great Hindu saints like Ramakrishna. So that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is that you need, if you really believe the vision that we're setting out, to get as acquainted as possible with the simple laws and truths of this great evolutionary secret that has been kept hidden, but each of the major traditions have known, the potential divinization of the human.
Mm-hmm.
And the wonderful truth is that there are some amazing books which will help you. There's Sat Prem's great book, Satprem, The Adventure of Consciousness, which is the Bible of evolutionary mystics, because it's a great evolutionary mystic writing about the greatest of them all, Sri Aurobindo, and in a way that will rock your world, because it will challenge everything that you think about spirituality, but it will give you an astounding ancient vision, renewed for our time, of how the divine can be born in the human. It's very important not only to do your mystical practice, but to start expanding your consciousness, your imagination of what's happening. And we call this in the book, the transfiguration imagination. And that means that through your expanding mystical awareness, you cultivate a consciousness that is an evolutionary consciousness that is able to hold the extremity of the opposites that are dancing in our world. To do what Jesus asked, to fuse together the wisdom of the serpent with the innocence of the dove. The wisdom of the serpent being the deep shadow wisdom that has to be installed in every sincere seeker now, facing the demonic in the real, the dark powers that are part of the mystery of the alchemy of the one, facing the dark in politics and economics and the whole horror of power, facing the dark inside oneself. And you have to be able to do it on a scale that we've never been able to do it, because now that ferocious set of forces are claiming humanity and enacting humanity's destruction, and can only be stopped by being made conscious and healed by the innocence of the dove, by the visionary mystical awareness of deathlessness and endless possibility that comes from us being children of God. That's the two kinds of wisdom that you need to forge and fuse into the evolutionary consciousness that can stay steady, and while being very open to what's happening in the horror of the death, always keep alive the eyes of the birth and always serve the birth as it appears. And it always appears ragged and fragmentary, but if you've got the eyes of the birth from your evolutionary intelligence, you know where to put your energy. And that takes me to the third point, which is that if you are real about what's going on, and if you really see it, and if you're doing your real inner work, and if you're expanding your evolutionary consciousness to be able to be guided to understand how the death is preparing the birth, and then seeing the birth, and then focusing on it and helping it, if you're really prepared to do that, you have no option but to become a sacred activist, become somebody who, in the core of your life, with your resources, with your thoughts and passions and energy, and with the conversations you have, that you dedicate yourself to a cause that really matters to you, that really breaks your heart open, so that you can be part, not just spiritually and mystically, but actively of the great birth that is not just going to be of us into a new species, but of all of the new institutions and arts and sciences and political and economic structures that are going to be born from that just, inspired, compassionate, passionately harmonious vision. That's what you're going to have to do. That's how you rise to radical regeneration. That's how you earn radical regeneration. You turn up as someone wanting to be completely different in all the different parts of your life, bitch slapped awake by extreme tragedy, exhilarated beyond belief by the vision of evolutionary possibility, and focused on pouring calmly all you are out to fertilize the birth of the new human.
Oh my goodness. There's so much, there's so many questions I have, and so many discussions that we could go into. I want to, in a minute, ask you about the 4 stages of Kali's dance
Yes.
and how they relate to us. But I wanted to I wanted to see if you agree with this, that the or if I can rephrase some of what you just said, that we're part of an energetic story that is itself becoming. So we have a crucial part in it, of course, but creation, I mean, we've evolved out of creation, and creation keeps moving, it keeps creating. And we've become attached to our own beliefs that keep us working against that flow. And so we can't stop it. We can't stop creation from continuing her story, but we can destroy ourselves by not surrendering to it, to the next phase.
Yes.
Is that adequate?
That's it. Oh, absolutely. This cycle is known in the mystical traditions, and it's known most in the Hindu tradition, where they have known that we were at the beginning of Kali Yuga 450 years ago, when Kabir was writing in Benares. And Kabir knew that what had been unleashed on the world was a force of greed that could annihilate humanity. He could see it, he could feel it, he could smell it. What I learned when I studied deeply this tradition and had the good fortune and blessing to meet an old woman in Benares in 2008 who was the leading Kali mystic, secret Kali mystic. She was very old and very funny and very frightening and absolutely naked, and told me the following. She said, look, Kali Yuga is speeding up. We are very close now to the defining horror. This was 2008. She said, the world is mad, and it's a huge, exploding, burning lunatic asylum. And Kali Yuga usually goes in 4 stages, but these 4 stages have been compressed into the last 100 years at a new rate of intense unfolding. And the stages are difficult, dangerous, severe, lethal. And she said, look, when we discovered what we were doing to the climate in the late 50s and early 60s, we entered the difficult stage. When we did nothing about what we were discovering, but just plunged deeper into an orgy of greed, we entered the dangerous stage. When we did nothing, even as we knew through the Rio conferences up to Copenhagen, where I was at in 2008, which was a complete, disgusting farce on a heartbreaking level. And I really, after that experience, wanted to migrate to Mars. I thought I'd be one of Elon Musk's first. It was so shocking to see just how in denial and how apathetic we were about the horror that's coming, and it's here now. And she said, now we are in the severe stage, the one just before the last. And in the severe stage, mega crises of all kinds start erupting out of control. And unless this is taken as a major sign of a massive transfiguration the human race has to go through, of mind, heart, soul, and body, intention on every level, political, economic, social, unless the human race sees and feels and gets that it is really being pinned against a blazing wall by its own ferocious, horrific choices,
Mhm.
and does heroic work fast to transfigure the situation by being transfigured itself, then it will be lethal. Then she will dance and destroy the race, and the race in its self-destruction will take a great deal of nature with it, but it won't destroy nature. Nature will be remade and revivified by the goddess, which it is, but we will not be here because we will have proven that we have no right to be here, having treated being here with such obscene lack of dignity and tenderness, and being still in the face of overwhelming, erupting clarity, so blind to what we now absolutely yesterday need to be doing about all of the major terrible problems, the COVID epidemic, the economic collapse, the climate change, the immense crisis of the extinction of 1 million species on the brink of extinction, the immense crisis, the soul crisis, the spiritual crisis that has made humanity so narcissistic and so secretly nihilistic. So all of these, she said, show us exactly where we are. But then she said something which was really important, because what she said was, there are two versions of how Kali Yuga plays out. One is that Kali dances and everything is destroyed.
Mm.
And the other is that Kali dances, almost everything seems to be destroyed, and a great golden birth takes place in those who have let her dance them into their next level of evolutionary truth.
Mm.
And they are the ones who become gold. They are the ones who are turned to gold by the terrible grace that she gives of having all of their illusions annihilated, but being born into a new level of power and radiance because they've died into life.
Mm. This really is the caterpillar turning into the butterfly.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the whole of humanity doing it at the same time in a mega crisis of many, many proportions that is acting on the whole of humanity at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's come, we have no idea where it is going to end. It could end very soon, very badly.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a very volatile situation. But why we wrote the book is to inject the calm, steady, evolutionary, revolutionary perspective that challenges humanity to see the reality of what it's done, but also offers humanity this astounding truth that I'm experiencing, that many others are experiencing on the earth, that a new humanity is being born,
Mm-hmm.
and challenging humanity to face both of those and to bring that facing together in a new consciousness that can then enable millions of people to start coming together to go on the streets to protest, to call for major structural changes in a global revolution of sacred activism. That's
Mm.
the vision of what could be if we are able to truly get going. And we shall see.
We shall see. I wonder, I'd like to ask your thoughts about, first of all, the counter revolution that we are seeing, the negation of science. You know, this sort of, and also the people who, and I've been guilty of this at times as well, the people who say, you know, maybe we would be better off just being destroyed. You know, maybe everything would be better if we were just gone, because there is so much hatred, there's so much violence. I'm not there in this moment, but you know, I have had moments of that. So that's a couple of things thrown at you, a couple of different perspectives. But what do you make of that? Those things.
Well, the first
Mm-hmm.
has to be seen squarely.
Mm-hmm.
This is far more than an attack on science, which is stupid enough and cruel and ridiculous enough, especially in a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Not the time to question science, especially at the moment when it's made an unspeakable breakthrough in a vaccine that could work to help
Mm-hmm.
millions of people not die from this. But the real horror of what's happening is that it's the genocide of truth. Obama called it truth decay with typical politeness, but I call it truth genocide.
Mm.
Because what's being deliberately done by people with massive amounts of money and who control huge media outlets, what's being done is a conscious programming of people to believe fantasies and lies so that they can be manipulated by fascist forces, manipulated into violence and into destroying American democracy and into denying climate change at the very moment where we have to act.
Mm-hmm.
So if you step back and see what is happening from a mystical perspective, what you see is that there's an eruption of a vast new truth promising radical regeneration, a vast truth of our divine evolutionary destiny and of the nature of the crisis, a truth which is truth speaking in a very harsh but very exalted way. That's coming in. And what's meeting it is this systematized eruption of lies, trying to abort the power that that truth brings for revolutionary structural change. So
Mm.
all the dark powers that want humanity dead, that want humanity to gut itself and commit suicide and take a great deal of God's creation with it, that want that orgy of horror to be fulfilled, they are all now trying to destroy truth in all of its forms. Because when they do, and if they do, nothing can be done because the world will be divided on whether it should take the vaccine, so the whole pandemic will go on. Divided on whether climate change is real, when climate change is actually threatening the extinction of the human race. Divided upon whether the animal species are really in need of help. Divided about whether there are really nearly 2 billion people living in abject poverty on the planet. If you can kill truth and control people through resentment and grievance and the nastiest, ferocious forces of their nature, you can establish on the earth now in a way you couldn't have done even 50 years ago, even 20 years ago, because of the bringing together of technology and political and atomic and biological weapons. You can establish an antichrist regime, a dark dystopian,
Mm-hmm.
controlled, servile humanity. And that's part of the plan behind the scenes, because if you really look at the systematic destruction of truth, and you see it in many different areas. You'll see it, for example, in the stealing of our private truth through Facebook and the other massive organs of media. They're taking our private truth and they're making it into commodity, into data, which they use to become obscenely rich and control our private truth spheres by feeding us the kind of algorithmic information that we think we need or they think we need. That is a destruction of truth. Think of what's happening in artificial intelligence when quite nakedly the people who are in control of developing artificial intelligence exult at the possibility of ordering human beings like pizzas. You can have a green-eyed, purple-haired, nice little boy who has athletic. You can DNA your pizza. You could have whatever you want. Who's going to be ordering the pizzas, do you think? It does tend to be the ones with money and power. And what do they want? They want to be omnipotent with a whole group of marvelous robots doing their work and a rubbled, reduced, enslaved humanity there to do whatever needs doing, like making the beds or maybe cooking for the children. That's the fantasy of omnipotence that's been played out in this horrible fascist dark dream of the mega billionaires who have immense money behind it. And I'm not making this up. I wish I was. If you read the real stuff on this, like Jane Mayer's book, Dark Money, you'll see that this is what I'm describing is not science fiction. It is actually the living practice of certain extremely powerful people who are behind those in power at this moment. So that's what that one is.
Wait, can I just let me interrupt for a minute. it's interesting, ironic, I guess, that this counter revolution, I guess we'll call it that, believes that that we are what you say they are. You know what I mean? So they
That's
are.
how it always works. It's always the projection of one's own crimes. This is Trump's great gift to us. Whenever he says somebody else is lying, he is. Whenever he says somebody else is corrupt, he is.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever he says the election is stolen by the opponent, you can be damn sure that there were many efforts to steal the election on his side. We'll find that out.
Right.
That is how that works, doesn't it? That's how that darkness works.
Sure. And it's really fascinating. I was talking with someone the other day and about, the masses have been privy to displays of shadow and projection the last 4 years. People that may not have ever, ventured into that, at least they've been given such a performance of it.
Well, they'll have to get into it now because it's not going to go away. This is going to be an agony at the heart of America for a while.
Right.
And as for your second point, and perhaps we might end here because this is such an important point. I think it's very important for people to understand something, and that is that they will, if they become awake as to what's really going on, experience the desire not to be here.
Mm.
Experience the terror and the dread and the agony and the heartbreak. That is the truth of our situation, the truth of our revolutionary situation. We have ruined our world and we have caused unspeakable pain to all creatures. And we have created cultures and societies which are horribly cruel and violent and unable to deal with any of the major issues. This is a significant part of our reality. There are, of course, other beautiful sides, but they aren't as significant as what we have to face about ourselves at this moment. And when you do, you are threatened with the agony of being real. You can no longer hide in your little bourgeois fantasy. You can no longer hide in your little spiritual fantasy. You can no longer just be a narcissist who believes that God's going to do everything for you and somehow the great human spirit will come through. You're not given anywhere to hide. And at that moment, I think many people go through a desire not to be here at all, not to face this, not to have to go through this, a real resentment at the deepest level that they have to go through this, that this is what our souls, in a sense, signed up for in this incarnation. And I think it's also very important to be compassionate with yourself about that feeling, because it's the beginning of wisdom. It's the beginning of really facing the situation. And if it drives you to find deeper sources of miraculous life than you've ever found, if it drives you into deeper mystical practice, if it drives you to pour yourself out ever more richly in sacred action, if it drives you to really take off the mask of your persona and find yourself as a real divine human person prepared to give everything nobly for the birth of a new world, then your death wish turns out to be your great friend, because it makes clear that if you continue to live the life you're living, you're going to end hysterical and suicidal. That you either need to be much stronger, much more awake, much more nobly purposed, much more dedicated to others, much more passionate about justice, to have a hope of really standing in the fire of our time without being utterly devoured by it. That is the way in which you don't allow your depression, your pessimism, your suicidal thoughts to be the final reality, but that you use them from this new evolutionary intelligence that can understand them as the wisdom of the serpent. You use them to deepen your visionary passion, to show you just how wrecked your life will be if you continue not to discover who you really are.
Beautiful. And at the very least, at the bare minimum, this path, this sacred work that is in front of us now, this brutal work that is in front of us now, at the very least, it will change us in ways we couldn't have imagined. And at best, it's the salvation of us all.
It, it, it's even more amazing than that.
Mm-hmm.
It is that if you just accept that this is brutal and will kill you, it will kill you. To be real in this time, it will kill everything you have ever, every little fantasy you've ever come up with will be incinerated. It will be. But if you really trust God, you'll know that that is the sign of rebirth, that destruction of one personality and one very pseudo construction. That is the sign of resurrection. So if you're brave enough to do that right now, you will live the divine life on earth. Whatever happens to the earth, you will know that you are divine. You will live in the joy and the peace and the purpose and the passion of that. And you will radiate help and encouragement and wisdom and clarity to others. And if you die like a dog in the ditch, it won't matter, because you know that you're not dying. You'll know that you cannot die, because you'll have lived that life. And if millions of us wake to that and start working together from that consciousness, everything could change. And if everything doesn't change, those who are doing this great radical regenerative work will be the radiant nurses at the hospital, will be those who are helping us collapse more kindly, more gently, who help us perhaps leave a world that can still be inhabited by other creatures. We don't have to destroy it all if we're doomed from our own craziness. So we don't know how the situation is going to unfold, but we do know that the alignment with the divine consciousness and the unfolding of its secret purpose of birthing a new humanity, that alignment is crucial for our joy, our energy, our strength, our promise, and the promise of a new world arising out of the ashes of the old.
Beautiful. Andrew, you're such a beacon of light, your voice in these times. And I want to encourage everybody to order your book, Radical Regeneration. It's available on Amazon and probably numerous other places online. It's just an amazing book, and one that everyone must read. And I look forward to more talks with you.
Me too. Thank you so much for inviting me on, and love to all of you who are listening. God bless you.
Thanks so much. And you can find more about Andrew Harvey at andrewharvey.net. And I'm Raven Sinclair. My website's ravensinclair.com. We will see you again soon.